Hello, this is Teja Gerken with Peghead Nation, and I'm here to give a quick demonstration of a basic signal chain for amplifying an acoustic guitar. If you've been playing for a while, you may have found yourself in situations where just playing acoustically just isn't loud enough. It just doesn't provide the volume. This could either be because you're playing in a band with louder instruments, such as electric guitars or drums or bass, or it may be because you're getting ready to perform. You might just want to play at an open mic, and you might have tried just using an external microphone on your guitar and haven't been satisfied with that. So I want to show you some options for getting a pickup installed into your guitar and having an easy plug-and-play sound. I'm going to focus on showing you this technology with a flat-top guitar here, but a lot of the things I'm going to talk about will also apply to other acoustic instruments. So even if you don't play guitar, stay with me and I have a feeling you're going to learn something in the course of this video. The first step to consider is whether to install a pickup in your guitar. A lot of guitars these days come from the factory with pickups, and many of these are very good, and some of them are the same brands that you would find as an aftermarket pickup, such as Fishman or LR Baggs. But even if you have a guitar that didn't come with a pickup, in most cases it's fairly easy to retrofit it with a pickup, and you have many choices to go about this. For example, this guitar here, which is a 1990s Taylor, didn't come with a pickup from the factory, but it's been retrofitted with an LR Baggs Anthem system. And this consists of a control module that's here in the sound hole, a pickup that is mounted under the saddle, as well as an internally mounted microphone. You can use the control module to blend the two sources so they have a very rich natural sound overall. Let me show you how to use the controls that are included in this LR Baggs Anthem system. Different pickup systems may use slightly different variations of these, but the fundamental idea is that you can change the sound of your pickup or your volume right here on board. So for starters, this system includes a volume control. It's self-explanatory. You can either use it to adjust your volume as you're playing or to match the volume of two different guitars on stage. You can even use it to mute your signals if you needed to, let's say, tune on stage and you didn't have a pedal to mute yourself or something like that. So always handy to have a volume control right on the guitar. In this case, there's another control that dials in the internal microphone in addition to the undersaddle pickup. And let me show you what that sounds like. So right now I have it dialed so that all we're hearing is the pickup that is mounted right here under the saddle. You can hear it's a very direct sound, not a lot of air in that signal, but very kind of warm sounding in this case. A lot of times having the pickup alone is quite sufficient, and many systems only use a pickup that is under the saddle, and that can sound really good. It tends to be hassle-free. It doesn't tend to feed back very much on stage, but there are ways to kind of further enhance that fundamental pickup sound, either by using an external microphone, which a lot of people combine with the pickup, or by adding something that's inside. And let me show you what that is like in the case of this Baggs Anthem system. So right now I'm just got the pickup in here. I'm starting to dial in some of the internal microphone. You can probably hear a little bit more brightness. Also, if I tap the body of the guitar now, that really comes across. If I only have the pickup, you'll hear much less of that. So it really enhances the overall complexity of the sound. You may only need a little bit of this kind of a addition to the sound, but having that kind of control gives a lot of flexibility in your sound to shape it just the way you like it. Another type of pickup that's quite popular mounts right into the sound hole of the guitar. And these are commonly called sound hole pickups or magnetic pickup, which refers to the technology that they use. In this case is a Fishman Rare Earth, and it's mounted in this Larrivee parlor guitar. These pickups have a distinct sound. They use the same kind of technology as most electric guitars, so they tend to have a very warm attack, and I'm going to demo this in a moment. And just a different sound from the under-saddle pickups and internal microphone type approach. Another nice thing about these is that even though right now I have this permanently installed, many of these kinds of pickups can be installed temporarily. So if you only need to amplify occasionally, you can pop one of these in, let the cable hang out the guitar, and if you're just going to play play an open mic, you can just do that, or you can swap it between different guitars and so on. So magnetic pickups can be a great option for a lot of players, especially if you're just getting started amplifying your guitar. So let me give you a quick example of what this Fishman Rare Earth pickup sounds like in this Larrivee parlor. So you might notice that even though this is a very small guitar with a short scale that doesn't have that huge of an acoustic sound, once it's amplified with this pickup, particularly this magnetic pickup, it's a really rich, fat sound. I actually like using this guitar on gigs sometimes, where it really works well to cut through in a mix with other guitars, and it's a really great amplified sound. So that's the sound of a magnetic pickup in a typical guitar. Okay, so assuming that your instrument is equipped with a pickup, whether it's a factory installed one or one that you've added later, how do you go from there to actually hearing the amplified sound? Well, the first step is to plug it in, and that is typically done with a 1/4-inch cable. It's called a standard guitar cable, typically on an acoustic instrument, we'll plug into what's called an end-pin jack. This is kind of a combined strap pin jack. You plug it in there. And then you have the options of either going to an amplifier or directly to a venue's PA system. And most musicians will end up doing both at different times for different situations. But let's start by talking about an acoustic amplifier. You might ask, why an acoustic amp? Why can't I just use the amp that I use for electric guitar, or that other people use for electric guitar that's in my rehearsal space? The big difference between amps that are made specifically for acoustic instruments and typical electric guitar amps is that acoustic amps are designed to be as transparent as possible. Basically, they are like a PA system, or more like a hi-fi system at home, in that it's designed to amplify your natural acoustic sound in the most transparent way possible. That means that it doesn't add a sound, it doesn't add distortion, or it doesn't add certain frequencies. It just doesn't color the sound. That's really the idea behind it. For that reason, most acoustic amps are full range. Mostly they use a speaker, a larger speaker, and a small tweeter for the high frequencies, so that you get a full range sound all around. Other features that acoustic amps typically have is an EQ section that is really designed for acoustic instruments. Many times they will have a microphone input, like in this case, this is a Fishman Loudbox Mini. There are 2 channels. One is designed for guitars, one for microphones, so you can use this to play and sing through, or to run a second source, a guitar mic, through this. A lot of times they will also have an XLR output, which is used to connect with a PA. And there are other features that are really geared toward acoustic guitarists that really make them stand apart from standard electric guitar amps. And the sonic difference is really quite significant. It's hard to get a good natural acoustic sound out of an amplifier designed for electric instruments. Okay, so let's say that instead of using your own amplifier, you want to interface with a PA at a venue, whether it's a club or open mic, any kind of performance situation with a system bigger than a small amp, will typically require that you have input that is called low impedance. A low impedance signal uses an XLR cable. It's also known as a microphone cable, and there are 3-prong cables that are obviously different from the typical guitar cable that comes right out of your guitar. Most of the time, if there's a PA, the venue will also have what's called a DI box, and that's a little box that basically converts your guitar cable signal into this type of microphone signal. But it can be very useful to have your own box that combines various functions, including having your own DI box. And these units that I have brought here with me are examples of that. For instance, this is a Fishman Platinum Pro EQ. And you'll notice that it has the XLR output right here and the standard 1/4-inch input here. So I would plug my guitar into this using the standard guitar cable, and I could go with the balanced output from this right into the PA, or the stage snake, it's called. There are basically several inputs like this that are right on stage, and you can interface with that in a way that you can't with just your standard 1/4-inch output. So having your own multifunction box like this is extremely handy. I would recommend getting one of these, really just about for anybody, because it gives you so much more flexibility on stage, any kind of performance situation, really. I use these all the time, even if I'm just playing through an amp, because I find that the additional functions, like the EQ, a notch filter, and a built-in tuner, all these kinds of things really are useful in any situation, and so I carry my box with me all the time. Let me show you some of the functions. This was the Fishman Platinum Pro EQ. I'm plugged into a similar unit made by LR Baggs. This is called the Baggs Venue. Very similar functions as the Fishman Platinum Pro I just showed you. Really, it comes down to personal preference. Several manufacturers make these types of units. Many of them are very good. These two have very similar functionality. It comes down to whether you like the sound of one better than the other, or even something simple as preferring the way one of the tuners looks or the way the controls work. I'm going to show you some of the basic functions on this Baggs Venue, starting with a built-in tuner, which is really a very handy feature. It is connected with a mute button, so if I'm unmuted, you can hear my signal coming through the amp. If I hit the mute button, you can now only hear my guitar through the microphone that I have here to pick up my voice. And it immediately hits the tuner, so I can tune silently on stage. The mute button is also really good to have if you need to switch instruments on stage. I often carry 2 or 3 guitars on stage, and if I unplug them without the mute button, you'll hear a loud pop on stage, and sound engineers hate that and audiences hate that. So having the mute button is a very handy feature for that. Other features include an EQ, and pretty much all of these multifunction boxes have EQ built in. In this case, there's a bass EQ, parametric mid-section, so you can really fine-tune your mid-range on there, a high tune, a treble, and a present. So a lot of EQ options to really fine-tune your sound depending on whether there are certain needs in the room that you're playing in, any deficiencies in your pickup sound that you might need to compensate for with this, or just preferences. If you like a slightly brighter sound or bassier sound, you can do that with this. For example, you can hear how much I can boost the bass, or cut the bass, or give me more treble. Of course, this would be done in a much more musical fashion if you were actually playing with this. Very handy to have. There's also a phase control on most of these units, which you can use to really match yourself with an ideal sound with a PA system to make sure the speakers in your guitar are working in phase. There's typically one setting that sounds better than the other, and that means that you're in phase, so that's something to always try if you're on stage. Having the volume control right on stage can also be very handy if you need to adjust your sound and you can't reach the controls on the PA, and so on. So overall, these units are just extremely useful, whether you're going through a PA or just through an amplifier. In some cases, you may even be able to use these in a recording setting if you use your pickup. Just gives you a lot more flexibility, and having the extra preamp stage between your guitar and the amp or the PA also tends to improve your signal to give you a warmer, better, more natural sound. In this case, I have this plugged straight into my amp. I don't have a PA set up here in the studio. The functionality would be very similar. If I was going to a PA, I would use the microphone XLR output that's on the back of this unit. In this case, I'm using the standard 1/4 inch input from the preamp into the amp right here. And I just have the control set flat because this particular setup sounds great going flat into the amp. I can use the controls on the amp to slightly change my sound. Similar EQ functions as are found right on the preamp. I have the mids cut just a little tiny bit right here. Now most amps also include some basic effects. In this case there's some reverb, which can be very nice to have. If I set up a little more drastic settings, it's more obvious to hear. You probably wouldn't want to use that much, but it can be useful to just see what it sounds like. Having a little bit of reverb is a very basic effect. It's probably the first effect most people add to acoustic guitar, and just gives your sound a little bit more of a lively quality to it, like you're playing in a nice big room that has some natural ambience. So very useful for that. This Fishman amp also has chorus built in. gives you a little bit of a shimmering sound. So you may have noticed that some of the controls are similar on the amp and the preamp, and that begs the question of which one do you use. In some cases, you may even have EQ on the guitar, which means you might have 3 places to adjust your EQ. I would really let your ear be the guide. In my case, none of my guitars have the EQ right on board, and I tend to use the EQ on my preamp rather than the amp because it tends to be more convenient to reach. My amp might be a little bit further away, the preamp will be close by, and in many cases, the kind of EQ that's in here is a little bit more extensive and precise than what's found on the amp. So these are some of the fundamentals of acoustic amplification. We're very fortunate these days that the technology has matured and advanced to a point where it's fairly straightforward to get a good sound on stage. Whether you're installing a pickup into an existing guitar or using a factory-built pickup, we're fortunate that we have gear that's dedicated to acoustic amplification, whether it's amplifiers, preamps that are really fine-tuned to making acoustic instruments sound good, and of course pickups that really sound better than ever before. Today's pickups are highly advanced and fairly easy to install, and you can really have predictable results with relative ease. I would recommend that you check some of these things out, either at your local dealer. If you have friends that use this kind of equipment, have them show you what they use and try it out and find the type of pickup and amplifiers that really suit your playing style, that you like the sound of, and have fun with it. Go out on stage, go to an open mic, see what it sounds like. It's really nothing like hearing yourself play and hearing your instrument played through a larger sound system. It can be a lot of fun to go down that route. So enjoy, experiment. For Peghead Nation, I'm Teja Gerken.